They treated her like furniture. Someone you walk past, speak over, forget. But that night, in a room full of millionaires and billion-dollar secrets, everything depended on her. A powerful man collapsed that a critical phone began to ring, and the people with titles, money, and authority were too scared to answer. So the waitress did. That single decision would destroy one man's fortune, expose a traitor, and pull a woman out of the shadows into the spotlight. Watch closely, because this story proves the most underestimated person in the room can change everything. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know, sometimes the people we look past are the ones who end up changing everything. This is a story about a girl named Ruby Park and how one night in Los Angeles changed her life forever. Ruby was 24 years old, working as a server at the Golden Terrace, one of those fancy restaurants in Beverly Hills where a single glass of wine costs more than most people's car payments. She wore a crisp black uniform, moved quietly between tables, and did her job so well that people barely noticed she existed. And that was exactly how it was supposed to be in places like this. You were meant to be helpful but invisible, present but forgettable. But Ruby had a secret. Behind those tired brown eyes was a mind that never stopped working, a brain that absorbed everything around her like a sponge. While she poured water and cleared plates, she was listening, learning, remembering. Most people didn't know that Ruby had spent 3 years studying international business at UCLA before she had to drop out. Her mother got sick, the medical bills piled up, and suddenly Ruby's dreams of working in global trade vanished. She went from lecture halls to serving trays, from boardrooms to back rooms. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, the private diamond room was hosting Victor Kane, the 79-year-old founder of Kane Tech Industries. Victor had built his empire from nothing, starting with a small electronics repair shop in San Diego and turning it into a technology giant worth billions. Now he sat at the head of the table, looking frail and tired, watching his nephew Derek with eyes full of disappointment. Derek Kane was everything Ruby despised. He was 38 years old, but acted like a spoiled teenager. He wore his privilege like armor, treated servers like furniture, and believed the world owed him everything because of his last name. He was loud, drunk, and already celebrating a deal that hadn't even closed yet. "To the merger," Derek shouted, raising his glass so carelessly that expensive scotch splashed onto the white tablecloth. Ruby moved in quickly with a napkin, cleaning the mess before it could spread. Derek didn't even glance at her. He just shifted his elbow, nearly hitting her face, completely unaware that another human being existed in his space. "The Japanese haven't signed yet, Derek," Victor said quietly, his voice thin and strained. "Mr. Takahashi calls at exactly 9 o'clock. If we miss that call or if he senses any disorganization, this deal dies. Do you understand?" Derek waved his hand dismissively. "Relax, Uncle Vic Takahashi loves me. I sent him that vintage watch collection, didn't I? The Rolex set from the 1960s. We're golden. Besides, you're too old to worry about this stuff anymore. That's why I'm taking over as CEO next month. You need to rest. Permanent rest." The room went silent. The lawyers sitting around the table looked down at their plates. Everyone knew what was happening. Derek was pushing his uncle out, using the board's concerns about Victor's health to stage a takeover. Ruby felt anger rise in her chest as she stepped back into the shadows. She had read about Victor Kane in business journals back when she was still in college. He was a builder, an innovator, someone who created jobs and opportunities. Derek was just a parasite, feeding off his uncle's legacy. Victor looked at a sleek black phone sitting on a side table near the window. It wasn't a regular phone. It was a secure satellite line, used only for the most important international negotiations. "Is the phone charged?" Victor asked, worry creeping into his voice. It's fine, Derek snapped, standing up unsteadily. "I need to use the bathroom. Don't touch my drink." He stumbled out of the room, leaving the heavy doors slightly open behind him. The atmosphere grew tense. Ruby could feel it in the air, the way you feel the pressure drop before a storm. Victor checked his watch, an old classic Omega that had probably been with him for decades. 8:58, he whispered. Ruby stayed near the water station, watching. She knew she shouldn't care. She was paid $14 an hour to carry plates, not to worry about billion-dollar deals. But she couldn't help it. The injustice of it burned inside her. Victor had built something real, something that mattered. And now his nephew was about to destroy it all because he was too drunk and too arrogant to show up when it counted. The clock on the wall clicked forward. 8:59. Suddenly, Victor clutched his chest. His face turned gray, and he gasped for air, his hand reaching weakly toward his jacket pocket. "Mr. Kane." The lawyers jumped up, panicking, bumping into each other. "My pills," Victor wheezed, barely able to speak. Chaos erupted. The men swarmed around him, fumbling, useless in a real emergency. Ruby didn't hesitate. She rushed forward with a glass of cold water and a clean towel. "Give him space," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the panic. The lawyers, surprised by her authority, actually stepped back. Ruby knelt beside Victor, placing the cold towel on his neck and helping him swallow his heart medication with careful sips of water. "Breathe, sir," she whispered gently. "Just breathe slowly." "The call," Victor gasped, his eyes darting to the black phone across the room. "The call." And right then, as if the universe had perfect timing, a sharp electronic ring cut through the chaos. "Ring! Ring!" It was exactly 9 o'clock. "Someone get Derek," one of the lawyers shouted. "He's in the bathroom," another yelled. "I'll go find him. Ring! Ring!" Victor grabbed Ruby's wrist with surprising strength, fueled by pure desperation. "Answer it," he pleaded, tears forming in his eyes. "Please, don't let it go to voicemail. If Takahashi gets voicemail, he'll walk away. He doesn't tolerate waiting." Ruby's heart pounded. "Sir, I can't. I'm just a server." "Answer it," Victor begged. "Buy us time." The lawyers stood frozen, too scared to touch the phone without Derek's permission. Ruby looked at the old man, saw his life's work hanging in the balance, looked at the door where Derek was nowhere to be seen. She stood up. She smoothed her apron. She walked across the plush carpet to that black phone. She took a deep breath, picked it up, and pressed the green button. And that's when everything changed. "Kane Tech Industries," Ruby said, her voice calm and professional despite her heart hammering in her chest. There was a pause on the other end, then a rapid stream of words, but not in English. The voice was deep, formal, and speaking Japanese. "Who is this? Where is Victor? I don't have time for secretaries. If Victor doesn't respect me enough to answer personally, this deal is finished." It was Hiroshi Takahashi, CEO of Takahashi International, one of the most powerful technology distributors in Asia. Ruby had read about him. He was known for being brilliant, precise, and absolutely unforgiving when it came to business etiquette. Behind her, the lawyers were whispering frantically. "What's he saying? Is that Chinese? Japanese? Hang up. Wait for Derek." Ruby ignored them. She turned her back to the room, pressed the phone closer to her ear, and did something no one expected. She switched languages. "Takahashi-san," Ruby replied in flawless Japanese, her tone dropping to match the gravity of the moment. "Please forgive me. Mr. Kane is experiencing a medical emergency that just occurred. He personally asked me to take this call to convey his deepest respect for you." Silence on the line. Then a shift in tone. Curiosity. "A medical emergency? Is he seriously ill? And who are you?" Takahashi asked, switching to accented English, testing her. Ruby understood this test. In Japanese business culture, if she answered in English now, she would mark herself as inferior, just an assistant. If she stayed in Japanese, she positioned herself as an equal, or at least as someone Victor trusted completely. Ruby continued smoothly in Japanese. "My name is Ruby Park. I am Mr. Kane's trusted advisor for Asian markets. He insists we proceed because he trusts no one else with the details of your agreement, especially regarding the silicon chip distribution rights for the Tokyo market." She had overheard Derek bragging about the Tokyo clause earlier while yelling at an assistant. It was a gamble, but she had to take it. Heavy pause. Then, from behind her, the doors burst open. Derek stumbled back in, his face flushed red, his nose running. "Who the hell is on my phone?" he bellowed. Victor, still sitting in his chair but breathing easier now, held up a shaking hand to silence Derek. He was watching Ruby's back, his eyes sharp. He understood enough Japanese to know she wasn't just making small talk. On the phone, Takahashi chuckled. It was a dry, dangerous sound. "The Tokyo distribution rights. You are informed." Derek usually ignores such details. "Very well, Ms. Park. I will give you 5 minutes. But if Derek takes this phone, I will hang up immediately. I find him exhausting." Ruby felt a chill run down her spine. She had just been handed the keys to a billion-dollar vehicle, and she didn't even have a driver's license. "Understood, Takahashi-san. she said in Japanese. Let us discuss the logistics. Derek marched over, grabbing Ruby's shoulder roughly. Give me that phone right now, you stupid waitress. Do you have any idea what you're doing? Ruby spun around, covering the phone's mouthpiece. Her eyes blazed with an intensity that made Derek actually step back. He said if you speak, he hangs up, Ruby hissed, her voice low and fierce. He knows you're drunk, Derek. He can hear it in the background. Do you want to lose this deal, or do you want to shut your mouth and let me save your inheritance? Derek froze, shocked. The lawyers gasped. Nobody talked to Derek Kane like that. Let her speak. Victor's voice cut through the tension. It was weak but carried absolute authority. Derek, sit down. That's an order. Derek stood there, his mouth opening and closing, but he backed away. He slumped into a chair, glaring at Ruby with pure hatred in his eyes. Ruby turned back to the window, looking out at the glittering lights of Los Angeles. She took another deep breath, and for the next 12 minutes, Ruby Park didn't serve food. She served brilliance. She navigated every complex question Takahashi threw at her, using information she had absorbed while silently refilling water glasses for the past 4 hours. She used her knowledge from her university days. She bluffed when she had to. She deferred with respect when it was appropriate. She spoke his language, literally and figuratively. Finally, Takahashi spoke. Very impressive, Ms. Park. I am satisfied. Tell Victor the First will sign the preliminary agreement tonight. However, I will be flying to Los Angeles next week for the final signing ceremony. I expect you to be present at that dinner. I want to meet the woman who understands my business better than the heir apparent. I will be there, Ruby stammered, her heart racing. Sayonara, Park-san. The line went dead. Ruby slowly lowered the phone. Her hands began to shake now that the adrenaline was fading. She turned around. The entire room was staring at her. 7 men in expensive suits, frozen in shock. Derek looked like he was going to be sick. Victor was looking at her, as if he was seeing her for the very first time in his life. He agreed, Ruby whispered. He's signing tonight. The room exhaled collectively. The lawyers began to clap nervously, unsure of what else to do. Derek stood up, his face twisted with rage. He walked over and snatched the phone from Ruby's hand. You lucky little nothing, he spat, his voice dripping with venom. You think this makes you special? You violated company protocol. You impersonated an executive. That's fraud. You're fired. Get out of my sight before I have you arrested. Ruby looked at Victor, hoping he would defend her. Victor opened his mouth to speak, but another coughing fit seized him. He was too weak to fight his nephew right now. Ruby straightened her back. She reached behind her, untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table next to that black phone. I don't need to be fired, Derek, she said, using his first name without adding sir. I quit. But remember this, you didn't close that deal. I did. She turned and walked out of the diamond room, her head held high, her dignity intact. But as soon as she reached the service hallway and the doors closed behind her, she leaned against the cold wall and slid down to the floor. She buried her face in her hands. She had just saved $1 billion empire. And now she was unemployed with rent due in 3 days. You know that feeling when you do something incredible, something that should change your life for the better, and instead everything falls apart? That's where Ruby found herself 3 days later. She sat on the edge of her mattress in her tiny studio apartment in Koreatown, staring at her cracked phone screen. Another rejection email. Dear Ms. Park, while your experience is noteworthy, we have decided to pursue other candidates. This was the 6th rejection in 2 days. And it wasn't random. Ruby had applied everywhere, hotels, catering companies, even coffee shops. She was known in the industry as reliable, hardworking, and professional. Normally, she could walk into any restaurant and get hired within hours. But something was terribly wrong. She called her friend Lisa, who managed the front of house at Meridian, one of the best restaurants in downtown LA. Ruby, Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper. I can't talk long. Lisa, what's going on? You said you guys were desperate for staff. Why did I get rejected? There was a painful pause. Did you make an enemy of Derek Kane? Ruby's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? There's a memo going around the hospitality networks, Lisa whispered. Your name is on an industry blacklist. It says you were fired for theft and misconduct involving confidential client information. Ruby, he's destroyed your reputation. Kane Tech is a major corporate client. If any restaurant hires you, they risk losing huge contracts. Nobody will touch you. I'm so sorry. The call ended. Ruby sat there, numb. Theft. Misconduct. Derek wasn't satisfied with just firing her. He wanted to make sure she could never work again. She walked to her small window, looking out at the gray buildings. She had $43 in her bank account. Her rent was $1,800, due in 2 days. Her landlord, Mr. Chun, was a decent man, but he couldn't afford to be charitable. Meanwhile, across the city in the glass tower of Kane Tech Industries, Derek was celebrating. He sat in his uncle's leather chair, already moving his belongings into the CEO's office, even though the board hadn't officially made him CEO yet. He swirled expensive whiskey, looking down at the city like a king surveying his kingdom. His assistant, a nervous young man named Brandon, knocked hesitantly on the doorframe. "Sir, we have a situation." "I don't have situations, Brandon. I have solutions." "What is it?" "It's the Japanese delegation." Mr. Takahashi's office sent the schedule for next week's signing gala. They specifically requested that Ruby Park be seated next to him. They listed her as Director of Asian Operations. Derek laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "He thinks the waitress is a director? That's hilarious. Just tell him she's unavailable. Tell him she moved to New York. Tell him she's dead." "I don't care." "We tried that, sir," Brandon said, sweating. Takahashi's assistant called back 10 minutes later. She said if Ms. Park isn't at the dinner to finalize the semiconductor details, Mr. Takahashi will not attend. He said, and I quote, "I do not trust Derek Kane to understand the technical aspects of our agreement." Derek's glass slipped from his hand, crashing onto the mahogany desk. "The disrespect. I am Kane Tech." "There's more," Brandon added quickly. "The stock dropped 3% this morning because rumors leaked that the deal might be unstable. If Takahashi walks away, the merger fails. If the merger fails, the board will vote no confidence on your promotion." Derek's face turned purple. He needed this deal desperately. He had already borrowed against his future shares to pay off gambling debts in Macau. If the stock crashed, he wasn't just losing the CEO position. He was facing bankruptcy. "Find me someone," Derek snarled. "Get me a girl who speaks Japanese. Someone smart, someone attractive. We'll dress her up, give her glasses, tell her the name is Ruby Park." Takahashi only heard her voice on the phone. He barely saw her in the dim restaurant lighting. "We'll fake it." "Sir, that's incredibly risky." "Do it," Derek screamed. "Or you're fired too." 2 days later, at 11:30 at night, Ruby was exhausted and smelled like grease and desperation. Since the fine dining world had closed its doors to her, she had taken the only job she could find, a cash-under-the-table shift at Tony's 24-hour diner in East LA. No background checks, no questions asked. Just endless coffee refills for truck drivers and night shift workers. She was wiping down the counter when the door chimed. The atmosphere shifted immediately. A man walked in wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Ruby's entire year of rent. He was tall, African-American, with kind but intense eyes. He looked completely out of place among the tired faces and worn booths. He walked straight to Ruby. "Coffee?" she asked, keeping her head down. "Black, no sugar," he said. Then he added quietly, "Ms. Park." Ruby froze. She slowly looked up. "I think you have the wrong person." The man removed his sunglasses. "My name is Isaiah Brooks. I'm the head of security for Victor Kane. I've spent the last 48 hours looking for you. You're not easy to find, Ruby." Ruby gripped the counter. "Did Derek send you to threaten me? Tell him I'm not talking to anyone. I just want to be left alone." "Derek doesn't know I'm here," Isaiah said calmly. He reached into his jacket. Ruby flinched, but he pulled out an envelope. It was thick. "Mr. Kane, Victor Kane, wanted you to have this. It's a thank you for what you did that night. He knows Derek blacklisted you. He's working to fix it, but his health, it's not good." Ruby looked at the envelope. She knew there was probably $10,000 in there. Maybe more. Enough to pay rent. Enough to start over somewhere else. She picked it up, felt the weight of it. Then she slid it back across the counter. "I don't want his charity," Ruby said, her voice shaking with pride. "I earned my place at that table. Derek treated me like garbage. Taking this money feels like hush money. Tell Victor the first hope he recovers. But I'm not for sale." Isaiah looked at her for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across his face. He said, "You'd do that." "What?" "Victor told me. If she takes the money, just leave. She's a nice person who got lucky. If she refuses the money, bring her to me. She's a fighter." Isaiah stood up. "Grab your coat, Ms. Park. Your shift just ended." I can't just leave. Tony will fire me. Tony has already been compensated for the next year, Isaiah said dryly. The car is outside. The boss wants to see you. 30 minutes later, Ruby walked through the quiet corridors of Cedars-Sinai Medical Center's VIP wing. Isaiah led her to a private room where Victor Kane lay in a hospital bed, connected to various monitors. He looked smaller, friendlier than he had at the restaurant. But when Ruby entered, his eyes opened, sharp and alert. You look terrible, Victor said, a small smile on his lips. You don't look so great yourself, Mr. Kane, Ruby shot back, crossing her arms. Victor chuckled, which turned into a cough. Derek is planning something stupid. He's going to bring a fake you to the Takahashi dinner tomorrow night. Some actress who speaks a little Japanese. He thinks he can fool a man who built an empire on reading people. Ruby's eyes widened. He's going to destroy the deal. Exactly, Victor said. And when Takahashi walks away, Kane Tech loses everything. Thousands of jobs disappear. My 50 years of work turns to dust. He struggled to sit up. I need you, Ruby. I'm a waitress, Mr. Kane. I'm not an executive. You're not a waitress, Victor said firmly. Isaiah did research on you. Top of your class at UCLA before you had to drop out. You speak 3 languages. You understand international business. I heard you on that phone, Ruby. You have instinct. Derek has the degree, but no instinct. Victor pointed to a garment bag hanging on the door. In that bag is a dress. Tomorrow night, there's a gala. I want you to walk in there, not as a server, but as my representative. I've drafted legal documents giving you temporary authority to negotiate on my behalf. It's legal and binding. If you walk in there with those papers, you outrank Derek. Ruby felt her heart pounding. Derek will have me thrown out. Let him try, Victor whispered. What do you say? Ruby looked at the garment bag. She looked at her worn-out sneakers. She thought about Derek's face when he called her a stupid waitress. A fire ignited inside her. I'll do it, she said. Victor sank back into his pillows, relieved. Good. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we fight back. The ballroom at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel was a sea of designer gowns, tuxedos, and champagne. This was the event of the season, the Kane Tech and Takahashi International Merger Celebration. Derek stood near the entrance, sweating in his expensive suit, checking his watch nervously. Where is she? He hissed to Brandon. The agency sent her. Her name is Candy. She's in the restroom practicing her lines, Brandon whispered. God help us, Derek muttered. Just then, the doors opened. Hiroshi Takahashi entered. The Japanese CEO was impeccably dressed, his face serious and observant. He walked directly past the appetizers and approached Derek. Kane-san, Takahashi nodded coldly. Where is Ms. Park? I have questions about the shipping logistics. Hiroshi, good to see you, Derek forced a smile. Ruby is she's running a little late. You know how women are. Takahashi frowned. I do not appreciate waiting. She's here, Brandon signaled frantically. A woman approached from the hallway. She was tall, blonde, wearing a dress that was too tight and too revealing for a business event. She walked with a model's exaggerated stride. Mr. Takahashi, the woman chirped in a terrible American accent. I'm Ruby. So nice to meet you. Takahashi stared at her. He looked at Derek. This is Ruby Park? Yes. New haircut, Derek lied desperately. Takahashi's expression turned ice cold. Ruby-san, please tell me what we discussed regarding the semiconductor quality standards during our phone conversation. The woman, Candy, froze. She looked at Derek in panic. The quality. It was very quality. Top quality. Takahashi's face became stone. He turned to Derek. You insult me. This is not the woman I spoke with. This is a child playing dress-up. Hiroshi, listen, Derek began. The deal is finished, Takahashi announced, his voice carrying across the room. The music stopped. Everyone turned to stare. I do not conduct business with liars. Wait. The voice rang out from the grand staircase, clear and commanding. Every head turned. Ruby stood at the top of the stairs. She wore an elegant deep red gown that looked like liquid silk. Her hair was styled in a sophisticated updo. She wore minimal jewelry, just a simple silver pin on her dress, the Kane Tech logo. She didn't look like a waitress. She looked like she owned the room. She descended the stairs, her eyes locked on Takahashi. Isaiah Brooks walked 2 steps behind her, a silent guardian. Takahashi-san, Ruby said in flawless Japanese. Please forgive this theater. My colleague Derek thought it would be amusing. But I am here now as promised. Takahashi's expression softened immediately. He recognized the voice. Park-san. You are late. Only precisely late enough to make a memorable entrance, she smiled. She reached the bottom of the stairs and walked right past Derek, who stood frozen with his mouth open. Security. Derek screamed, finding his voice. Remove this woman. She's trespassing. 2 security guards moved forward, but Isaiah stepped in their path. He didn't move aggressively, but his presence was like a wall. She stays, Isaiah said calmly. I am the CEO, Derek shrieked. I gave an order. Ruby stopped. She reached into her small evening bag and pulled out folded documents. She handed them to the corporate lawyer standing nearby. Read it. Check the seal and signature, Ruby said calmly. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. He scanned the paper, his eyes widening. It's a power of attorney. Signed by Victor Kane this morning, notarized and witnessed. It designates Ms. Ruby Park as his legal proxy for all Asian negotiations. Effective immediately. The room gasped. Board members whispered frantically. Ruby turned to Derek. She stepped close to him, her voice quiet but fierce. Sit down, Derek. Or Isaiah will escort you out for disrupting a shareholder event. Derek looked around desperately. He saw the board members watching him with disgust. He saw Takahashi looking at Ruby with respect. He was beaten. He stepped back, his face pale. Ruby turned to Takahashi. Now, Takahashi-san, about those shipping logistics. I've prepared a revised proposal. Shall we discuss it over dinner? Takahashi offered his arm. It would be my honor, Park-san. As Ruby took his arm and walked into the dining room, she caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror. The scared waitress was gone, but the night was far from over. Derek wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. As they sat down for the first course, Derek was frantically typing on his phone under the table. He sent a text to a contact saved as the fixer. Initiate Plan Diamond. Frame her now. The real battle was about to begin. The morning sun poured through the windows of Ruby's hotel suite at the Beverly Wilshire. She was packing her bag, preparing to head to Kane Tech headquarters to sign the final merger documents with Takahashi. She felt invincible, like she had finally found her place in the world. Then came the pounding on the door. Heavy, aggressive, official. LAPD. Open the door. Ruby's heart stopped. She walked to the door and opened it slowly. 3 police officers stood there, along with a detective with tired eyes and a worn suit. Ruby Park. Yes. You're under arrest for grand theft. You have the right to remain silent. Ruby laughed nervously, thinking it was a mistake. This is insane. What are you talking about? We received a report from Kane Tech Industries security team, the detective said, pulling out handcuffs. The Azure Star, a diamond worth $8 million that was on display at last night's gala, has been reported stolen. Security footage shows you entering the display room. We found the diamond in a safe deposit box registered under your name. That's impossible. Ruby gasped as the cold metal clicked around her wrists. I've never even seen that diamond. I don't have a safe deposit box. Save it for your lawyer, the detective said. They marched her through the hotel lobby. People stared. Cameras flashed. And standing near the revolving doors, holding a coffee cup and wearing a satisfied smirk, was Derek Kane. He watched her perp walk like a predator watching wounded prey. He mouthed one word as she passed. Waitress. The next several hours were a nightmare. Ruby was processed, fingerprinted, and thrown into a holding cell at the West LA station. Her phone was confiscated. She had no way to contact Isaiah or Victor. Derek had played his move perfectly. In the interrogation room, the detective threw a file on the table. We have security footage, Ms. Park. We have the diamond in a box registered with your social security number. The box was opened at 4 a.m. this morning using a key we found in your hotel room. I never had a key, Ruby shouted, tears streaming down her face. Derek Kane is framing me. He has access to security systems. He could have planted everything. Derek Kane is a respected businessman, the detective sighed. You're a desperate woman with barely any money and massive debt. Who's a jury going to believe? The door opened. Derek walked in, looking immaculate. Detective, may I have a moment with Ms. Park? I'd like to see if we can resolve this privately. For my uncle's sake. The detective hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. The door closed. Derek sat across from Ruby, leaning back in his chair like he was lounging at a country club. I told you, Derek whispered. You don't belong in our world. You thought wearing a nice dress made you one of us? Power isn't about clothes, Ruby. Power is about control. And I control everything. Victor will know the truth, Ruby said, her voice shaking. Victor is in a medically induced coma, Derek lied smoothly. The stress of the gala was too much for his heart. He collapsed this morning. With him incapacitated and you arrested, the board just voted me CEO. My first act? Pressing charges against you and firing you. Ruby felt the world spinning. Victor was gone. She had no allies. No money for a lawyer. Here's the deal, Derek said, sliding a paper across the table. Sign this confession. Admit you stole the diamond. In exchange, I'll reduce the charges to a misdemeanor. You get probation, no jail time. But you leave Los Angeles. You never speak the Kane name again. And if I don't, 20 years in prison, Derek smiled. And I'll make sure everyone knows you as the thief who pretended to be important. Ruby stared at the confession letter. Her hand reached for the pen, hovering over the paper. Tick-tock, Cinderella, Derek sneered. Suddenly, the door didn't just open. It slammed against the wall with such force that Derek jumped from his chair. Isaiah Brooks filled the doorway. But he wasn't wearing his usual suit. He wore tactical gear with a badge hanging around his neck that read, FBI Corporate Crimes Division. Step away from Ms. Park, Derek, Isaiah commanded, his voice like thunder. Excuse me? Derek sputtered. I'm the CEO of Kane Tech. I demand. You demand nothing, a sharp female voice interrupted. A woman in a gray power suit walked in, carrying a leather briefcase. My name is Lauren Hayes. I represent Victor Kane and the actual interests of Kane Tech Industries. Victor is unconscious, Derek shouted, looking at the detective for support. That was a lie, Lauren said calmly. Victor has been awake since 4 a.m., right around when you accessed the security system to plant evidence. Derek's face went white. That's fabricated. The rhythmic hum of an electric wheelchair came from the hallway. Slowly, Victor Kane rolled into the interrogation room. He looked pale, with oxygen tubes under his nose, but his eyes were clear, alert, and burning with quiet fury. Derek stumbled backward, hitting the wall. Uncle Vic, the doctors said. The doctor said I needed rest, Victor rasped. They didn't say I was dead. I've been awake since you decided to access the vault system, Derek. Victor tapped a tablet on his wheelchair. A projection appeared on the wall showing complex security logs and financial records. Recognize this IP address, Derek? Victor asked softly. It traces back to your personal computer. The one you used to access the company systems remotely. The same computer that created a fake safe deposit box registration in Ruby's name. The same computer that altered security timestamps to make it look like Ruby entered the diamond display room. The room went silent except for Derek's heavy breathing. You're senile, Derek stammered. You don't know what you're reading. I might be old, Victor said, but I built this company on precision. 3 years ago, I noticed you were using company resources for personal gain. Small amounts at first. So I created a trap. I had our security team install hidden audit protocols that tracked every access to sensitive systems. I gave you enough rope, Derek. And you hanged yourself. Victor nodded to the detective. We have everything. The fake registration. The altered timestamps. The email to a private investigator asking him to plant evidence. And we have chat logs where Derek explicitly discussed framing Ms. Park. The detective stepped forward, pulling out handcuffs. Derek Kane, you're under arrest for theft, evidence tampering, fraud, and conspiracy. No, Derek screamed as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. He thrashed and struggled as they pulled him toward the door, his expensive suit wrinkling, his carefully styled hair falling into his face. As he passed Ruby, he lunged at her, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. You're nothing, he spat, saliva flying. You're just a servant. You'll always be nothing. Ruby stood up slowly. She didn't flinch. She didn't back away. She looked him straight in the eyes, her voice calm and steady. I served the company, she said quietly. You only served yourself. That's why you lost. The door slammed shut behind him, cutting off his screams. The room fell into heavy silence. Lauren Hayes, the lawyer, immediately removed Ruby's handcuffs. My apologies, Ms. Park, Lauren said professionally. We had to let the arrest proceed to ensure all evidence was admissible in court. We needed Derek to incriminate himself completely. Ruby rubbed her wrists, looking at Victor. You used me as bait. I did, Victor admitted, and he didn't try to hide it. I knew he would come after you. You were the one variable he couldn't control. I needed him to make a move so reckless, so desperate, that even his expensive lawyers couldn't save him. I'm sorry, Ruby. Truly sorry. Ruby took a deep breath. She looked at the confession letter on the table, the one Derek had tried to force her to sign. She picked it up and slowly tore it in half, then in half again. Did the deal with Takahashi go through? She asked. Isaiah chuckled, a low rumble. That's the first thing you ask? You were almost sent to prison, and you're worried about the merger? Did it go through? Ruby pressed. Yes, Victor smiled, genuine warmth in his tired eyes. Takahashi signed everything this morning, but he added one condition. He wants a liaison he can trust. Someone who understands both the business and the culture. Someone who speaks his language, literally and figuratively. Victor reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. It wasn't a check. It was a contract. I'm retiring, Ruby. For real this time. My heart can't take this anymore. The board has appointed Isaiah as the new CEO. Ruby looked at Isaiah and smiled. Congratulations. You'll be amazing. I know security, Isaiah said, crossing his arms. I know people, but I don't know international markets like you do. I need a partner, a chief operating officer. Ruby's eyes widened. Me? Isaiah, I don't have an MBA. I don't have the pedigree. I didn't even finish college. Victor leaned forward in his wheelchair. Derek had the MBA. He had the pedigree. He had every advantage. And he was a complete failure. Victor pointed to the door where Derek had just been dragged out. You have something he never had and never will have. You have integrity. You have instinct. And you can absorb a 40-page technical contract while serving water. That's not waitress work, Ruby. That's executive leadership. He pushed the contract toward her. Ruby stared at it, her hands trembling slightly. Ruby Park, Chief Operating Officer, Kane Tech Industries. Base salary, $2 million. Stock options. Full executive authority. Health insurance for you and your family. And a signing bonus that will cover your mother's medical bills. Ruby felt tears well up in her eyes. My mother's bills? Isaiah did thorough research, Victor said gently. We know why you left school. We know what you've been carrying alone. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Isaiah opened the door. The car is waiting. We have a 2:00 meeting with Takahashi. He's expecting you. And Ruby, this time you're walking in through the front door. Ruby picked up the contract with shaking hands. She looked at her reflection in the two-way mirror. The fear was gone. The shame was gone. The invisible girl had stepped into the light. Let's go, she said. 3 weeks later, Ruby stood in her new office on the 42nd floor of the Kane Tech building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Los Angeles, the city that had tried to break her but ended up rebuilding her instead. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from her mother. I can't believe they approved all my treatments. Ruby, what did you do? Ruby smiled and typed back. I answered a phone call, Mom. That's all. I just answered when it rang. There was a knock on her door. Isaiah poked his head in. Ready for the board meeting, COO Park? Ready, Ruby said, grabbing her tablet. As she walked down the hallway, she passed a large photograph hanging on the wall. It was Victor Kane from 30 years ago, standing in front of his first small repair shop, young and hungry and full of dreams. Underneath was a quote. Success isn't about where you start. It's about what you do when opportunity knocks. Ruby paused, reading those words. She thought about that night in the diamond room. The chaos. The phone ringing. The choice to answer or let it go to voicemail. She had answered. And everything changed. So let me ask you something, friend. What would you have done in Ruby's position? Would you have picked up that phone? Would you have had the courage to speak up when everyone expected you to stay silent? Ruby's story teaches us something powerful. Your current situation doesn't define your destination. Right now, you might be in a job that doesn't appreciate you. You might be working somewhere that treats you like you're invisible. You might be carrying dreams that other people have told you are too big, too impossible, too unrealistic. But here's the truth. Every single person who ever did something extraordinary was once in a position where people underestimated them. Every CEO was once an employee. Every leader was once a follower. Every expert was once a beginner. Derek thought his last name gave him the right to treat people like they were beneath him. He forgot the most important rule of life. Character matters more than credentials. Integrity matters more than inheritance. And how you treat people when you have power reveals who you really are. Ruby didn't have money. She didn't have connections. She didn't have a fancy degree on her wall. But she had something more valuable. She had the courage to step up when it mattered. She had the ability to see opportunity in chaos. She had the strength to refuse defeat even when the whole world told her she was beaten. The phone rang in that room, and she made a choice. She didn't overthink it. She didn't wait for permission. She didn't wonder if she was qualified enough. She just answered. And that one moment of courage changed everything. So here's my question for you. What phone is ringing in your life right now? What opportunity are you ignoring because you don't think you're ready? What door are you afraid to walk through because you're worried about what people will think? Maybe it's time to stop waiting for permission. Maybe it's time to stop letting other people's opinions define your possibilities. Maybe it's time to answer the call. Ruby went from serving tables to running a billion-dollar company in less than a month. Not because she was lucky. Not because someone handed her success. But because when her moment came, she was ready. She had been preparing in the shadows, learning when no one was watching, growing when no one was paying attention. Your moment is coming too. The question is, will you be ready when it arrives? Derek is in prison now, by the way. He's learning a hard lesson about karma. You can't build a legacy on arrogance and cruelty. You can't sustain success through manipulation and lies. Eventually, the truth catches up. Eventually, justice finds its way. And Victor? He's retired now, spending time with his grandchildren, finally at peace knowing his company is in good hands. He learned that legacy isn't about keeping power until your last breath. It's about recognizing greatness in others and giving them the chance to shine. As for Ruby, she's thriving. She sends money back to her mother every month. She mentors young people from difficult backgrounds. She still remembers what it felt like to be invisible, so she makes sure to see people, really see them, especially the ones everyone else overlooks. Because she knows something that Derek never understood. True power isn't about making yourself feel big by making others feel small. True power is about lifting others up while you rise. So remember Ruby's story the next time someone treats you like you don't matter. Remember it when you feel invisible, when you feel stuck, when you feel like your dreams are too far away. Remember that somewhere in Los Angeles, there's a woman sitting in a corner office who used to wipe tables for $14 an hour. She's living proof that your current chapter isn't your final chapter. The phone is ringing. Will you answer it? If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of your own worth, please hit that like button. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need to hear them. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken that paid off? Or what's the phone call you're afraid to answer in your own life? Let's inspire each other. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, you are not invisible. You are not less than. You are exactly where you need to be to become who you're meant to be. Keep going. Your moment is coming.